I'm Mike Wondolowski, and for a number of years I've been involved with Carpinteria Valley Association, an organization that's involved with a number of development issues and environmental protection issues in Carpinteria. CVA was incorporated in 1964, 1 year before the city of Carpinteria was incorporated. So sometimes we consider Carpinteria our little brother that we've got to take care of. Through the 80s and into the early 90s, there was a lot of development pressures on Carpinteria. And there was some really interesting history that we're going to talk about here today. So I'm going to be talking with Brad Stein, who was personally involved in a lot of that, and ask him some questions and to reminisce a little bit about what Carpinteria was, what it might have been, and what it turned out to be. So, hey Brad, good to talk to you.
Mike, good to be here. Thank you.
So, the 1990 was really kind of an inflection point in the history of Carpinteria. Mm-hmm. It was a point where the path that the city was on was taking us in one direction, and you were involved in changing that path a bit, taking us to a much different place today. So help set the stage. Talk about the mid to late 1980s. What was going on in Carpinteria? What were you doing? And what did you see in town?
Okay, first, Mike and Larry, I'd like to preface this because my memory may not be as sharp as it used to be, but my recollection growing up here, my mom and dad had a house that they bought across from, she was our grandmother. After World War II, she moved up here from LA. And then we started coming up every weekend since 1960. Summers, any vacation time, we'd come up here. So we saw Carpinteria kind of in its infancy stage, so to speak. And through the 70s, I went to school down in Los Angeles, down the Burbank area. And then after I graduated high school, moved up here full-time in 75, started at Santa Barbara City College, and then hired out with Southern Pacific Railroad back in the day.
How'd that work out for you, by the way?
It was a part-time job. 47 years later, I just retired last year. So part-time
Congratulations.
job. Thank you. But now I'm bored. I want to go back to work. So anyway, through that period of time, we saw a lot of change. And one of the changes, my mom and dad were always big into Carpinteria, preserving it. Ernie Woolbrandt was always our plumber and would always just drop by and say hi to my mom and dad and talk politics, what's going on. And in 1965, when the city did incorporate, Southern Pacific was going to donate the train station there. And we lived right on the beach side of the tracks. The city at that time, and again, hindsight's always 20/20. Back in that time, you never wanted old buildings, so railroad gave them a year to decide to keep it, or they were going to tear it down. And so a year later, they tore it down, which, again, looking back, everybody has their own future thoughts of Carpinteria. Carla and I were married in 1979. Moved up here then, full-time. We would go to walk from our house on 3rd Street to the high school football games at middle school now. And started seeing a lot of development starting. My grandmother moved from Dorrance over here on Vallecito Road. Mm-hmm. And I remember when we were kids going to her house, Ogan Road ended, and this was all lemon orchards in the back and on the other side of Linden. So we started seeing the subdivisions come in, which back in the 60s and the early 70s, that's what was happening all over California.
People didn't object then?
No, they were looking, again, lots of farmland, lots of room to grow. They built the new high school up there because they saw the potential of the valley mm-hmm. growing. So again, my folks kind of instilled on my brothers and I've got 4 brothers, and that, if you live in a place and you want to help make it nice, you get involved. So fast forward to 1988, living on 3rd Street, we really liked the rural, no sidewalks. It was just like it always had been when we were kids. Dorrance Way, 3rd Street. And the city came along and wanted to put curbs, gutters, and sidewalks. And I mean, I never in my wildest dream thought about getting involved in politics. So I'm somebody that if you're going to do something, don't talk about it, do it. So I ran for city council at that time, and the Bluffs was just on the horizon. And CVA was, Lois Seidenberg back then, was organizing to try and stop this Bluffs project, because basically what it was going to do was double the size of the city in this one fell swoop over there.
And then we'll talk more about you running for city council there, but that was really your first involvement, your first action to really step in.
Yes, yes.
And then how did you sync up with the other two members of your slate, Donna Jordan and Mike Ledbetter?
Well, it's funny, because when Carla was my campaign manager, we had a small group of friends in the beach area that thought like we did, and they were my committee. We had it was all, word of mouth, footwork, go to PIP and print all your flyers kind of thing. And exactly, for you kids at home, mimeograph. You don't even know what that is.
Google it.
Yeah, Google it. And we walked every single house in this community. And I remember knocking on Bob and Donna's door in 1988 and talking to them. Like I say, it wasn't a typical politician. Here's my flyer. Here, I'm going to go to next door or leave it there. I went into their house. He was tiling his shower at the time and asking me all these questions on how to do the grout and that. And we became friends after that. It was, and same thing, I knocked on Al Clark's door. I knocked on everybody's door. And met a lot of really good folks here in the community. And that's the way you really, I feel, know what your town's about. So that's how I met them in the beginning.
Was that 1990?
1988, when I ran for city council. And at the time, I was quite vocal with CVA. I was never a member of CVA, and I always tried to distance myself from any clubs or memberships, because it's too easy to say, oh, you're only doing it because this is what they want you to do.
Right.
No, I believed in what they were looking at with the Bluffs. And that was one of my arguments. And I remember the developers at the time did not quite like the way I was talking. And at that time, one of the council members, they were backing him. And 2 weeks before the election, they called it hit mail. They spent a ton of money sending out all kinds of propaganda on me personally and how I should never hold office because, I was not suited for it. And it's interesting. I lost that election by 11 votes. And the opponent outspent me, 25, 30 to 1 kind of thing.
Who was the opponent?
It was Mark King at the time. And so it's funny because Ernie Wilbrand kept saying, you got to run against this guy. And he was also quite vocal about not having the Bluffs developed as well. So that was my intro into politics, how it could get really nasty in a small town, which I never thought it would, but it did.
So instead of saying, this isn't for me, I'll go back to doing what I'm doing, somehow 2 years later, you found yourself in the same spot.
Well, again, I was called and asked, hey, you did a great job last time. You believe in this. You'll come to council meetings and speak up against things. We would love to see you run again. And it's funny, Carla goes, oh man, we went through, it was not fun in 1988, especially the way it all ended. So we ended up agreeing to do that. And the only way we could see anything happening of any change here is if we had a majority of the city council. And there were 3 seats up with Tom Lewis, longtime mayor, Carmen Robitaille, sweet lady. She was on our planning commission at the time, and David Lawrence, who was a professor at Westmont College. And so we thought, well, those 3 seats are up. If 2 of us can win, or one of us at least will try. And
There'll be a voice, if not a majority.
Yeah, a voice or majority, because that's the only way we could see anything changing here in the city. and again, going back, the mindset was always, you're going to develop your way out of a bad budget.
Yeah, so talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
Developing a way out of a bad budget. So
Okay.
what was the mindset of the council that you saw that you clearly disagreed with?
Well, one of the problems was back in the day, cities would incentivize developers. They still do today, to some extent. No development impact fees. The citizens of Carpinteria would help pay for curbs, gutters, sidewalks, all the infrastructure, schools, whatever needed to be added.
Streetlights,
Streetlights, the whole
water, sewer, those are districts, but still.
all of that stuff. Development would cause that, but people wanted developers to come in because they thought this is the way tax dollars were going to be produced, property tax wise. And I always saw it as like a pyramid scheme. It would pay off what it cost to put it in place and sell. Now you needed another development to cover what those impacts were going to be. And so we ended up, when we got on the city council, the three of us, at that time, Alan Coates was city manager, and he said, we've got I'm trying to think, our budget, I think, in '90 was $3 million, and we were $300,000 in debt. Now, these numbers are going to be really close to my remembering. But he said, you're going to have to approve this Bluffs project, otherwise we're going to bankrupt. And we said, no, there's other ways around this. And we started.
Who's we? Who were the
Oh, it been Mike Ledbetter, Donna Jordan, and myself. The three of us unseated the three incumbents. And I remember thinking, okay, none of us were really politically driven until then, and now we're going to be running a city. And so Alan Coates shortly resigned after that because.
After the election.
Yeah, after the election.
So going into the election, let me start there.
Okay.
Going into the election, basically your slate was saying we don't want or need development on the bluffs.
Yeah.
There are other ways to balance our budget,
Yep.
and we don't need it, and we don't want it. How was that message received? It seems almost Pollyannish. Seems overly optimistic. I know it's not,
Yeah.
but just publicly, it seems easy to shoot holes in that, given what the city council position was. How did the public accept that message?
All of a sudden, because overall the public did not want to see this Bluffs project. And we were now in charge of, okay, how are we going to balance our budget? How are we going to do this without raising taxes? We ended up contracting, we had before Channel Disposal. This is just an example. Channel Disposal doing our trash pickup. They would pick up twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. And you don't produce that much trash. And then we also had recycling programs, SB 959, I think, or 58, coming into play, where cities were going to be required to recycle. Well, we were told, oh, that's Sacramento, they're not going to do anything about it. But cities were going to be fined like $10,000 a month if you didn't meet your recycling requirements. So we said, okay, fine. The only game in town was Channel Disposal and Marburg. We said, well, let's go outside the boundary. That's the one thing, everything was always done. That's how it's always been done, We got E.J. Harrison, started researching, finding out they were gearing up for this recycling program. They came in and they charged a third less than what Channel Disposal was doing. And then they were geared up for all the recycling. So that was one way we saved the taxpayers a lot of money.
And so this was with a new city manager at this point? Or
Yes, we had a new city manager come in.
Kind of a more budget-focused
Yes.
business person, basically.
Yes, it was Paul Marangella came in at that time. We hired him. Let's see, I lasted through 6 city managers. But the Paul Marangella, and when I say 6, we had interim city managers because you can't run a city once they leave. The other thing we looked at, again, we had a small police force, 16 people, and we could never keep a full force. By law, you have, per 1,000 people, you have to have so many cops. Well, you're only going to have 1 chief, 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and the rest patrolmen. Now, you have to pay for these guys to be trained and buy their equipment, and they're mandatory to stay here for 1 year, and then they jump ship and go to a larger department where you have advancement. And we started looking around, okay, you got to have a police force. And originally, we only had 4 of the original cops that started with the city. The rest were all new hires, and they were all going to be jumping ship too. Plus the cars were outdated, our radio systems were
Right.
outdated, and that was going to be a phenomenal cost. So we went to the sheriff's department and said, okay, you need a South Coast substation. We've got a station. Let's negotiate you guys taking over. Oh, you can't do that. That's county. Well, yeah, you can do that. We're county. And interestingly enough, Carp was the first one. Then Solvang, Buellton, they all did the same thing. Goleta.
And Goleta incorporated with that plan. Yeah.
Yes, all the same thing. And all of a sudden, our police budget was halved, which saved a lot of money as well. Now, full circle though, now it's gotten crazy, and it's time to start, sorry Bill Brown, but it's time to start looking, hey, Ventura County Sheriff's maybe, Santa Barbara City. We'll start looking at other options of what can you do for the citizens of Carpinteria without sacrificing the quality.
Yeah, and so that really was some outside of Carpinteria's traditional box
Yes,
thinking.
absolutely.
It wasn't crazy stuff. It was just not the way it had been done.
No,
So that's
same with development impact fees.
Yeah.
Why are the citizens paying for all this when the developers, they're going to charge the same amount of money that it costs to have them put the infrastructure in, only they're not going to make as big a profit. We're just padding their profits.
exactly.
And, oh, you can't do that. We were told you can't do that. No one will come and develop. What a misnomer.
That hasn't been a big problem since then.
No.
So now backing up a touch, because all these things are happening in parallel. You've got
Right.
the Bluffs development proposal, an ultimate acquisition. Spoiler alert: we bought the Bluffs.
Yeah.
And then the city's finances, which was the fear-based motivation to hurry up and approve something.
Yes.
The new council took a seat after the 1990 election, so early 1991, and there's some stories about the lame duck old council after the election, before the swearing in of the new council. They approved the Bluffs project, the
Yes.
hotel plus commercial, retail, plus some other stuff and some residential and all kinds of stuff.
350 unit
Yeah,
condos.
huge sprawling development.
We would have had a gas station and a Jack in the Box.
Exactly,
So-
exactly. So that they approved that as a lame duck council, and it was pending at the Coastal Commission.
Yes.
And then the new council got sworn in, and what happened then?
Don and I, after we were sworn in that night after the meeting, drove to San Diego to appear in front of the Coastal Commission because they were supposed to vote on it the next day. And we were there with the approval of the council to pull it off their agenda. And so we went down there. God, it was a long night. And then the next day, spent the whole day at the hearing, and finally spoke to a couple of the members during a break saying, listen, this isn't what the city wants to have happen down here. We are the city council now, or on the city council now. And they pulled it off their agenda and sent it back to us.
It sounds like if it was in a movie, there'd be that ticking clock up in the corner.
Yeah, that was, like you say, now looking back, I can't believe we actually did that, but we did.
Because you had the experience of about an hour
Yes.
as a public representative.
Yes.
And said, let's go do this.
Yeah, and just, hey, do the right thing. So we did have to bring it back, and again, legally, we followed all the legal guidelines. We still had public hearings. We went through the EIR process. We got all the way through to where the next council coming in, they unseated one of our members, and then, or one of our members resigned. Mike retired, and they got the majority and decided Frank Serena sued us. And I remember before we changed council majority, they would show up every Monday night, the 4 lawyers that sit right in the front, and Chevron Land and Development, and they would serve a 1/2-inch thick packet of paper to our city attorney, who would say, okay, now we've got to postpone it till the next meeting so I can review this. And they did that 3 or 4 times. And finally, at the end, I was just tired of this BS. And I said, call for the vote. Mayor, let's vote on it. And it was a 3-2 vote. So it was, and then immediately afterwards, Frank Serena said, well, I'll sue you. Oh, okay. So he sued the city, and I was part of that lawsuit. So because their whole basis was I had a conflict of interest because I was a conductor on the Southern Pacific Railroad that ran through that property, and I had no right to vote on it. So
Okay. That sounds like a well-grounded lawsuit.
I didn't sleep well that night, by the way,
I'm thinking you probably didn't.
when they did that.
So then that project was shot down.
Yes.
But obviously the bus was still in private hands.
Yes.
Walk us briefly through what the rest of that process. There was a public fundraising campaign, and there was a whole bunch going on. I know you can't possibly explain it all.
Right.
But give us that summary of what happened between there and 98.
Okay. After being in court for 3 days and the judge tossed in the lawsuit, I slept better after that. The community came up. They were trying to present another plan, and Dorothy Campbell. We saw how big the crowd was. Probably 300-400 people for this. And
Now, mind you, the population of Carpinteria at that time,
Yeah.
and probably similar to today, is 19,000, 17,000, something like that. So
actually, it was about at that time it was about 13,000.
okay, that might be the whole valley. But 400 or 500 people is a huge number of people.
It's big. We ended up having it in the gymnasium at the middle school, and I remember Dorothy Campbell standing up. Saying, let's buy this place. And she waved like $1 or $10 or something around there. And that was really the start of the groundswell. And all of a sudden, everybody organized. I mean, CVA, Ted Rhodes was big in it, Arturo Teo. My mom and dad, they would go to farmers market and sell sweatshirts, or the avocado festival. Everybody did their part to raise money to buy this bluffs. And again, now Chevron Land and Development sold. They had 40-some thousand acres through California of developable land that they had hold of, and they sold this parcel off to Shea Vickers. Mm-hmm. And Shea Vickers was wise enough to do their homework and say, "Wow, this has been controversial for 20 years."
For those who don't know, Shea Vickers is probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest, home builders in the state, west, country, some universe, I don't know.
Western states.
Yeah, they are a huge home building operation.
They are big. And so Shea Vickers said, okay, we see the writing on the wall. We're smart enough to know this. We're not drawing this thing out for another 20 years. And they came up with the appraised price. I think it was $4 million. Mm-hmm. And the Citizens of the Bluffs formed, and we ended up buying it for the community.
And they had a certain amount of money to raise on a remarkably short time frame.
I think it was a year. They gave
it was
us a year.
even less. I
really
don't remember the details, but it was like
period.
less than a year to raise $1 million.
Oh, even more.
If Ted was here, he'd shoot me. I should know this by heart. But
don't listen to Ted.
We had this long to raise this many dollars. We had to raise many dollars a day.
It was incredible.
And they did it. And the public did it.
Everybody did.
And who were some of the players? Ted Rhodes, Arturo Teo.
Oh gosh, the whole CVA board, everybody there, everybody in the community. I mean, honestly, this was a community effort, which shows we may be a small community, but we can do this. Put our minds to it and do this. So, again, now I probably got off topic, but just
that's exactly what I was asking about. Yeah.
But I mean, Carpinteria, we could see kind of going through a change. And one of the things, and again, going back to the old city council, they wanted to form a redevelopment agency and put in the entire beach area, the whole downtown T, and turn it over to the development community to rebuild the downtown and the beach area that's underutilized, just a bunch of old houses.
Underutilized, meaning it's only 30 feet tall.
Yeah. We could do better than that.
We
We
do
could
far
20
better
stories.
than that. We do twice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So they wanted to form a redevelopment agency. And right after I got on the city council, again, I've done a little homework on redevelopment agency. I looked at Santa Barbara, what happened there. Look what happened there at Paseo Nuevo. There's a great example what should not happen. And it actually costs more in the long run to form a redevelopment agency. But the reason they wanted to do it is they had a development community that they could use power of eminent domain to take over anything they wanted in that area that they saw they could rebuild. So we thought, I went to a seminar in Fairfield, California, up there north of Sacramento. It was all on pros and cons of redevelopment agencies, and brought back a lot of information to the community. And that's where I found out, you talk about a pyramid scheme. You're just borrowing. Somebody down the future is going to be paying a huge bill. Yeah. You know, 40 years. You have up to 40 years to pay it off. Now those rules may have changed in the last 30 years.
And the state changed the law enabling it and clawed money back, stole money from redevelopment agencies, basically.
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
And so we ended up hiring Andy Newman. We had like a 6-year plan. And it's like when Carla and I built our first house on 3rd Street, we didn't borrow money. It took us 3 years, but cash out of pocket, we bought materials, and we would drop it there, and we would build what we could.
Till you run out of materials?
Yeah, till you run out, and then you do it again. And we did that as a city. We rebuilt the whole infrastructure. We didn't want to touch anybody's building. And we got, I believe it was Bank of Montecito, agreed to do a low interest loan up to $5,000 per mom and pop store for them to do their own thing, you know, because we wanted to keep the quaintness of.
So local, quote, small business loans with a small SBA.
Exactly. So we took block after block and made it really simple. I mean, Andy did a great job on that. And it was a big community affair. I mean, we had it months and months and months of all these meetings. And I remember we had big maps of the whole downtown T. And everybody got to draw what they wanted to see on these maps, on the site plans. And we finally whittled it down to where it's really basic, new trees, because Linden and Carp Ave used to flood big time. So we put in lots of drainage, very simple infrastructure with the sidewalks. That's why nothing fancy at all, but the trees. And took our time and got it done in about 6 years, but we didn't owe any money after that.
Right, and it's interesting you mentioned the process there, that there's a kind of a truism of people tend to support what they themselves create or help create.
Yeah.
That's what you just described, is the business owners, the residents, the interested people, residents came in and shared what they wanted to see, and it was basically, you described a consensus building process.
Yes.
No one got exactly what they drew on the map, but they saw the other ideas and didn't rail against them. They go, oh, that looks good too.
That's true. And one of the driving forces too, I should back up, we did the Vision 2020 process. And that went subcommittees, that went over a couple of years, that we came together with, what do we want to see here in the year 2020?
And this was in the mid-90s.
Yes, in the mid-90s.
So 25 years ahead.
Yes, and that's what also consensus building did. And I'm going to back up a little bit too. The Bluffs proposal and Mike, Don, and I getting elected tore this community in half. It was the business community versus the public kind of thing. And I can honestly say, here we are 40 years later, everybody has come together. Again, it's taken a long time, but it was really divisive back in the day. Hey, it's just like today in our federal government. But wounds have healed. People have, mended bridges, become friends that were real adversarial before. And I think listening to each other helped, did a lot. And now, down the road, it's coming back. Everything that we planned in the back in the past is coming to fruition.
So if you look at sort of stepping back one step from everything we just talked about, if you look at the period from the mid-'80s to when the Bluffs acquisition was finalized in 1998, look at that 10-year period. What's we've talked about some learnings and things, but what's something that the community can learn from that? What's something that we want everyone to remember about that period?
I think that, sorry, Larry, I may have messed up your microphone. I'm a professional speaker, you can tell. So from that period here, I think it's really understanding and listening to each other more. Because again, you see things, I see things going on right now, again, that we planned back there. An example, I'll use the example, we're looking at a Surfliner Inn.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that was looked at back in the 2020 parcel. We want alternative transportation to bring folks in. And it was always looked at, hey, we could have the train station rebuilt there and have a place for people to take the train up, spend the weekend, and leave again, kind of thing. And that to me is still, it's coming forward now. And honestly, my bias is I hope it does go forward, because it's going to help the community more than hurt a small few that are fighting it. I don't like the word NIMBY, but it is the NIMBY syndrome. They don't think of other things. I just read in the Coastal View about blocking views. The people that are really behind that are the ones that have the 3 stories on the beach side. They didn't think of the views of the mountains on their neighbors across the street, or the views down towards the ocean, the other neighbors. So
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great point, that people having the same overall goals.
Yeah.
Even the council members that you helped unseat
Yeah.
in 1990, they, as you described, they seem to have felt that the city needed to make the money to have revenue to provide the services the city had to provide police protection, to provide just basic services. And obviously their goal was to provide services to the citizens as were needed.
Yeah.
Their methods ended up being proven wrong, and even better methods were proven to work. But underneath it all, everyone really had the same goals.
Try and keep Carpinteria nice.
Yeah.
That was the bottom line. Everyone had a different view. It's like a piece of art, everyone sees it a little differently. And it's interesting because some of the folks that I know today that were real adversarial when we opposed the bluffs now are saying, that was a great idea. I hate to say short term, everyone always looks in the short term.
Yeah.
I always try and look 10 years down the road. Because we're going to get there faster. I'm finding that out the older I get. Getting there faster and faster. In fact, my oldest son, Eric, said that to me the other day. He goes, Dad, you kept telling us how fast, Eric, Jeremy, and Kevin and I grew up. And now he's got kids, and he goes, I can't believe how fast they're growing up.
Why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't you tell me? It's okay. It's okay.
So once the new council, or the 1990 election was passed,
Yes.
new council's in there, finances were somewhat stabilized, the bluffs were purchased, 98, the urban-rural boundary was locked down.
Yes.
That big part, we haven't talked detail about that, but we talked in the 60s and 70s, there was
Yes.
suburban development out into the farmlands.
That's what it was
orchards.
planned for,
And
yes.
then that was stopped. We said, enough, we've got enough here, we need our agriculture, and the urban-rural boundary line, that was locked down. After all these things happened, what are some other, or are there any other significant events in Carpinteria's political history and city history that were other possible inflection points that would have completely changed what Carpinteria is today?
Okay, that's a good point, because that actually hasn't changed. I've always been, and again, not just me, but our city council for the last 30 years, well, from 1990 till recently, has always been firm urban-rural boundary. And one of the things that helps the city and helps us with future development is the Coastal Commission saw fit to preserve agriculture, especially in Class 1 soils like we have here. And we're protected not only under a general plan, but the local coastal plan, which also reinforces that fight. Now, here again, when, oh shoot, now I forgot his name. He was the mayor of San Diego, became governor.
P. Wilson.
Pete Wilson, that guy, I'll tell you what, put together an advisory board of realtors and developers to tell cities RENA plans, tell them what they needed to see. It wasn't going to be mandatory. It's just suggestions. Well, somehow over the years, it's become
Mandatory.
mandatory, which is crazy. So throw out all these other things, take away local control of where you live, not where Sacramento is, and it's still a fight today. And we're losing that battle now. Look at what's happening, and look how the Board of Supervisors have put potential development in the ag, and that's just the beginning. I mean, once they hit that home, I was told today that one of the supervisors is, and I can't remember which one, or if it was a city council member in Santa Barbara. Someone said they thought it was Eric Friedman. I don't know if it was for sure or not, but said, we ought to really rethink all this and just tell the state, no, it's time. I'm like, where have you been? We should have been telling them this 5 years ago when they came up with this, or actually 10 years ago when they came up with the arena numbers. No, it won't fit in our community. We only have so much water. We only have so much infrastructure. Either you protect ag. Look what's happening down in Camarillo and Ventura, and the greatest soil in the world, and they're covering it with buildings.
Right.
Oxnard,
It protects it.
Huh?
It protects the soil.
Oh, it does. Yeah, that's right. Well, you know what? How else you also get polluted soil? You just pave over it.
Yeah,
Then
it's
you
fine.
don't have to change it.
It's fine.
Yeah. So
Mike, if I may,
Sorry.
what were some of the controversies with ag in the 90s and 2000s? I know there was transportation, light pollution.
well, transportation and light pollution. Well, we'll go in because that started back in the 70s. Growing flowers, greenhouses. That was one of the big things too, because when you hike up the Franklin Trail and look down, it's a different way of growing things, and there are responsible growers, and then there are some that aren't so responsible. And the thought was eventually all this ag is just going to be covered, which is your next step to, well, we've already covered the land, now we can just build houses.
Yeah,
and we'll
and-
save you money on water.
And the odd thing is that the greenhouses are generally a big concrete pad
Yes.
and a greenhouse on top of it, growing in an agriculturally zoned area, because it is agriculture,
Yeah.
but it's not using the soils.
No.
And so that's just a weird thing. Take agricultural soils and cover them up with concrete.
And now also look at some of the big outbuildings or accessory buildings that are being built out here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's again, they've figured out a way to twist it in their favor. And that's my biggest fear, is that's also going to happen. It's going to convert, because the more resources are used, the more they try and make it sound, hey, the more houses you build, the cheaper they'll be.
Right.
Let us keep covering it with these buildings, and we'll use less water. Come on.
So there's always issues. It was I guess in the late 1990s that the greenhouses were really popping up everywhere in Carpinteria Valley. The county then got the greenhouse ordinance to put
Yes.
a cap on the number of greenhouses. With the conversion to cannabis, we
Yeah.
all, not to our surprise, found out there was a number of greenhouses that were unpermitted,
Yes.
and they had to get permitted. So they got as-built permits.
I know.
Oh, that's okay. We forgive you.
Yeah. Okay, don't open that can of
I'm not
worms,
opening that
because
can of worms.
I'm
We
going
don't
to
have
tell you
time.
right now, that's our society today.
Yeah.
I mean, we have rules, but if you okay, just don't do it again.
So
And again, and again.
I'm looking at other points of inflection in our
Okay.
history. I'm thinking about Venico.
Oh,
I think
boy.
on Measure J.
Oh boy, Vinico. There's a group.
What
Yeah.
that was about.
Huh?
Explain the Venico.
Oh, Vinico was Standard Oil or Chevron. Vinico came in as a contractor because Chevron was pulling out of California, and they just were going to sell all these little refineries that they had that they haven't fixed a thing in 30 years, 40 years. They're run down. So they get these outfits that come in that are just going to kind of squeeze the last drop of oil out and do nothing and walk away. But the good thing was with Chevron on the hook, the deep pockets, at the meeting, the city council had to approve them selling to Vinico. And my only caveat then was, okay, if the sale is going to go through, I want it in writing that you will be the deep pockets cleaning up these sites, and that was at the time a lot of polluted sites were, hey, just file bankruptcy. Remember
abandoned.
Casmelia?
Yep.
Oh, well, just file bankruptcy. I got my thing, and that was my fear with
The
Vinico.
Halico facility in Oxnard.
Yeah, they're going to be on the hook for it.
Yeah.
Not the oil companies, the taxpayers are. So Chevron.
But
Oh, go
what
ahead.
was said in favor of the oil development was that it would infuse the school with money and so.
Oh, it's like the lottery system. Oh yeah, we give so much money to schools and to nonprofits. It's the same old song and dance. We'll give them pennies and take out dollars.
And so Vinico had a proposal to drill from their onshore facility and slant drill out into the ocean.
Drill, yeah. That way they could bypass a lot of federal regs.
Exactly, and extract oil that way, which is it's a proven technology.
Yes.
But it'd be oil drilling on land. The city review of that, the environmental impact report, showed a number of class 1 impacts, severe impacts that were legal reasons to deny the project.
Correct.
Before that was quite finalized, Vinico came up with a ballot initiative that ended up being Measure J.
Yes.
Put it to a vote of the people to change the general plan to allow this specific project.
Yeah.
How'd that go for them?
Not so good. And even the idea of covering this, I can't remember how much, 10-story derrick to make it look like a lighthouse. People didn't buy into that, you know that? And it went down, in flames, big time.
I have my notes here because I
It
wanted
was
to review that.
big.
My memory was it was pummeled.
Oh,
it was
it was
71%
That's what
no,
it was.
29% yes.
Big. And it's interesting because I've got friends here in town that work for Vinico, and they, in the beginning, were all pro Vinico, but as time went on, they can't stand them. It's just it. And now I don't know. Martinez went back to Denver. I think that's where they were based in Colorado.
Right.
So. Yeah.
It's an interesting piece of history. There's so much behind that. We don't have time to go into that, but it was just a fascinating and
again, it was something that it
was the promise of money.
Promise of money
Was what we got out of it.
There was a council member very anti me, and I won't say his name, but I remember again the same developers on the bluffs happened to hold the paper on his house and also funded his campaign. And he got elected to city council, and his swearing in, I shook his hand, congratulations. He goes, "Oh, this means nothing. I will be a state senator someday." And I looked at him and said, "Good luck with that one."
Wow.
That was the arrogance, but
Wow.
that's what
That's the opposite of community-minded, and I care what happens here, and that's why I'm here.
Exactly. And here he is. He was a homeboy here, and didn't care, but he was fed all this stuff. I can tell you different council members that were fed by certain developers that they were, we're so above this city now. And to me, this is the highest office you could possibly hold, living here, and seeing the same people at the market or at the schools or at Little League or anything. So
It's interesting that talk about the community-mindedness. Something comes to mind about, we talked about the acquisition for the bluffs and the fundraising. That was everyone in the community was community-minded there and helped chip in. Something else that's much less a photo op, but when the city voters passed Measure X, chose to increase the sales tax on ourselves to fund city services.
Mainly streets.
Mainly streets and library. That was another big part of the
That's
campaign.
correct.
It funds anything. It's general fund money.
And the other thing, and we always keep forgetting about it, the other thing that the community did, and this is a fight that my mom and dad started back in the 60s, the Carpinteria Marsh. There was 2 huge parcels. They wanted to build apartment buildings on it. The original plan was to dredge it and make it a harbor.
A marina, yeah.
A marina, yes.
Right.
And then they
With a yacht club.
Yeah. Ooh. No. Yeah. And the family that owned the 2 parcels, they were in trusts and they were spread out all over the place. But we came together as a community and bought that too. And with UCSB, restored the whole thing. And that's always one of these gems that you forget is there until you're down there and you start walking through
And what's interesting is you put those things together, the bluffs and the marsh, those are 2 areas that would have been highly lucrative in terms of property tax and potential sales tax to the city. and have huge expenses to go with it. And the public, the cities, the people of Carpinteria said no to both those. Not just no, but we choose to work hard to make those not happen. And then the residents of Carpinteria chose to make up for that loss in tax revenue by passing Measure X and saying, we have to make up for it. We have what we want. We have to pay for what we lost, in essence, over the previous decades. And said, yes, we are willing to pay for that. We will tax ourselves an additional 1.25%.
Because ultimately, you know, I mean, again, we could say it's a little self-serving because it is a nice place to live.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny, growing up, the argument was always, my parents, their friends all went to Newport Beach and Balboa when they were all little beach towns. And my mom and dad said, no, we're going to go north. Nobody goes north. Yeah, everyone's going south. And we always, growing up, pointed to, you know, Marina del Rey and Seal Beach and Huntington Beaches. You go to the beach there and it's all 3-story cracker boxes pushed together. And we didn't want that here. And like you said, people came together. We'd rather pay a little more here to keep it nice and open and rural than to sell out.
Yeah, and that's something that's impressive for the city. So a few more questions here.
Okay.
You were on the city council for decades, and you were mayor, and now you're on the architectural review board.
I just retired from that too. Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I know.
You were there too.
I know.
Few people understand the incredible time commitment that it takes to be on one of these councils or commissions or boards. It's not just the meetings, it's also, with the council, committee meetings. It's reviewing frankly, a ridiculously diverse set of technical information between financial, between planning, between public works stuff and contracts, that all this is on the agenda every 2 weeks, every meeting. What is it that motivated you to expend hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of hours in these roles?
I'd say, like I said at the onset in 1988, if you live here, you want to make your community nice. I mean, my kids grew up here, all of their friends, everything. I wanted to make it nice and keep it that way. And to me, the time, it's funny, Donna Jordan would always say, let's see, all the hours this month, let's see, we make $300. I think I earned about a nickel an hour. But then there's other benefits, you know, and just living here is the benefit and worth the time and effort. And I remember I told Roy Lee, who unseated me, I told Roy Lee, and his kids were there, I said, listen, when your dad goes to the store, said, I'll be right back, I'm going to get milk. He'll be back in an hour and a half to 2 hours, because when you walk to the store, everyone will grab you and say, hey, listen, I got to ask you about this. Oh, that's the other thing that Mike and Don and I did. Before, when I was building, I'd go to the lumber yard, and of course, you'd be at the lumber yard for 2 hours answering questions about what happened at the meeting. And then we ended up televising the meetings. And
I didn't realize that was the motivation.
That was the motivation. That was awesome. Because then now you don't have a problem with it. And then we finally got the water board and the school district to televise. And because they kept saying, oh, we're not going to afford that. Hey, it's set up at City Hall. You can do it at City Hall. Hey, we're all taxpayers here. And that's, you know, bottom line, when we were, let's see, Al Clark and I, the last 15 years, we were the budget subcommittee. And we always looked at the best way to spend the tax dollars. And like it was our own. We're the guys, I'll reach in my back pocket and write a check for this. Can we afford this now? If not, no. But if you're a nonprofit and you want to be doing this, let's work some way together where the city can dovetail with you and produce what you're trying to get at. The first $300,000 in debt when we first took office, the first $1 million in reserves that the city collected after budget time, we put into a fund to help Little League, Parks and Rec, all the kids programs, Boys and Girls Club. This, to me, was so important to get kids involved early on and to keep the prices affordable. And again, nowadays, people will pay somebody to take their kid to Little League. We started out at Lou Grant Parent-Child Workshop. In fact, before kids, Dave Winninger and I moved the trailer from Boys and Girls Club and reset it where they are now on 6th Street. We put the foundation in. That was 10 years before I had kids, but Dave asked if I wouldn't mind volunteering and helping do the construction. It's like, yeah, it's my community, I'll do that. Lo and behold, 10 years later, we had 3 sons. And at that time, it was always parent involvement. And towards the end of our youngest son, all of a sudden, au pairs started showing up. And we said, no, this is a parent-child workshop. You will be involved, kind of thing.
Wow.
So, but that answer your question. If you're part of a community, look at all the hours you put in, and you put in, Larry. I mean, you guys, we all put in the time because we believe in our community.
Hey, that nickel and half an hour, that adds up.
It does add up. It only took 28 years for me to cash in. I think I got about $1,200.
So again, thinking about these public hearings, you've been in on the dais for hearings that had hundreds and hundreds of people, and far more hearings where there's at most 1 or 2 members of the public who I think were just still asleep in the council chamber chairs or something.
Yeah.
But out of all that, you've got an incredible, city insider's perspective on the city's internal operations. What is something you would want everyone in Carpinteria to know about the city? The city staff, council, the city operations, the people running the city.
Wow, that's a good question, because I'll tell you, when we first started, everybody, staff-wise, all lived here in Carpinteria. Public Works, I had, there was a council member, drove me nuts. He's very outspoken, still is, about cutting government. Let's contract with Public Works. And I said, you know what? Here's the rub with Public Works. These guys that all work here know every street by name. They will, on their way in, if they see a branch or something wrong in the street, they stop and pick it up. These guys are dedicated beyond belief. And it's gotten to the point now, and same with city staff. City staff, Mary Ann Colson, Jane Diaz, everybody at the city, all the community development, all lived here, took a special interest in the community. It wasn't a 9-to-5 job, which I'm afraid is what it's turned into. There's still about 3 or 4 folks that still live, well, they do live at City Hall, work at City Hall that still are from this area, but overall, and again, it's again, economics. Right. People retire, and to fill the seats, they're driving from Santa Maria or Lompoc or Ventura or Oxnard, because let's face it, it's stupid money here that the cost of housing is, but it's not going to change. Yeah. I mean, there's only so much coastline, and you're not going to build affordable housing. All these, the joke is, oh yeah, we're going to build affordable housing. Oh, another thing I'm really proud of doing, and the camper park and Dahlia Court, those were slums.
So just to talk a little bit about those. Tell what were those? So that's a really good point.
I mean, we talked about affordable housing. I remember Dahlia Court was owned by a guy out of the country here, and he just ran it as a slum, and it had so many problems. Same with the camper park, so many problems there. And we partnered with People Self-Help, and we didn't condemn it, and we didn't use eminent domain, but we kind of turned the heat up on the owners to sell to People Self-Help. And People Self-Help Housing is a nonprofit. It's nonprofit. Dedicated to building and running, not selling, but building and running affordable housing. For families. For families. And if you go by there today, I mean, you should see pictures of it back then, and that was always really difficult to deal with. But I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to do something like that and make it truly affordable for folks. And I will say there were a couple of growers here that bought apartment buildings, renovated them, rented them to their employees too at an affordable rate. Now that was back in the day. I don't know if it's still happening with them or not, but they stepped up.
Right.
Because then we had other folks that would buy single family homes and rent it to 40 guys. And that just kills a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so, and again, we tried on the city council to stop the Airbnbs, because now you've got a single family neighborhood and you've got somebody that as an investment buys a house, now rents it out on weekends for $8,000 a month. And wait a minute, this
Yeah.
is a family neighborhood.
Exactly.
Why are we
So,
doing this?
so let's see. Last couple questions here.
Okay.
If you could get everyone in Carpinteria to just understand something about Carpinteria, what would that be? What would you want everyone to just really understand? Because some people are just so involved in their life and their kids and their job or multiple jobs, they don't have time to even look around. If
Yeah.
you could just sort of like get something to embed in everyone's brain.
Oh, wow. This is home. This is home.
Fair enough.
You know, you go to other communities and nobody knows their neighbor. You know, people across the street, oh, they moved? Oh, we didn't know that. This is home. And even folks that are I'll call them the next generation, or the people that are inheriting money, that are buying and keeping the prices up, even they're taking an interest in this. Not everybody is. I'm not that naive. I mean, there are a lot of people, second homes, McMansions. We love Carpinteria for the idea that it's a small beach town. When I built our house on 3rd Street, it was one of the little angled houses on 3rd Street. It was a 1,200 square foot, single story, and we could have gone 2 stories. And in fact, Ted DeLanitis, the building inspector, said, "Why don't you go 2 stories with this?" I said, "Because my neighbors on both sides are single family, story homes, and I am a good neighbor." And I think people here want to be good neighbors, most of them, but then there are other folks that'll come in with the money and say, you know, we love Carpinteria because it's quaint, small beach town, not to raise a family, but to come here and get away from LA or for a day. And they're the ones that are building McMansions, every square inch they can on it.
Yeah.
But they're also the ones that don't step outside the door and meet your neighbors.
Right.
So, and I kind of hope that continues. And I see it in a lot of areas, but I'm hoping it doesn't change like it has to the south of us.
Right.
Or to the north. Santa Barbara's the same way.
Yeah. So, okay, wrapping up here, looking back on the last 35 plus years, if we start at the election or
Okay.
more than that, is there a particular moment? Tell me about a moment or event that you think kind of captures the essence of Carpinteria as a small town.
Dorothy coming forward saying, "Let's buy the bluff."
What's that?
Dorothy coming forward and say, "Let's buy the bluff."
Oh God, that's awesome. That was really, you talk about a showstopper. That was really awesome. That auditorium erupted. I mean, it was fun. Gosh. I think too, another thing we tried to do, and when I lost in 1988, I got on the Citizens Advisory Board. Because again, Tom Lewis said, "Hey, instead of running for city council, start at the bottom and do that." Okay, I can do that. And so I went Citizens Advisory Board, and it was 15-member board across the community. And we had the idea of starting the Avocado Festival for the nonprofits. And everyone, oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to happen. Yeah, it will. We started reaching out to all nonprofits. And again, everybody rolled up their sleeves, and here we started. I think that's the other thing with Carpinteria, is that the go-to, the Dorothy Campbells who unabashed said, "Hey, we can do this." And I think there are a lot of folks in town that still think that way. So we got another big one coming up. God, the Bluffs is always on the attack. And now we're looking at Ground Zero, or Bluff Zero, which is the Veneco plant or the Chevron plant.
Right.
And that area. The other thing I'm going to say too, and I know I'm kind of jumping around here, that the mentality at the city now is we're afraid of being sued. We can't say no. And that is, I'll quote Mike Ledbetter, that's why we became a city, is to level the playing field, because the guys with the big bucks, that's all they threaten to do is sue, because they figured everyone's going to back down. But we should never do that as a community. We never have until the last couple of years. And the writing's on the wall with that. We need a city council that'll say no and not ask the city manager or ask the city attorney, can we do this? No, we are going to do this. We're paying you to figure it out. And they do. There's always a way. So just
Always a way.
always a way. Just got to get the right people, and that's what happened in 1990. We weren't afraid to say no.
You didn't know any better.
No, well,
And you haven't learned, so that's great.
Actually, yeah, that's probably true. I should have. In fact, in closed session, I was told, "You're in this problem because you should not have voted," and I'm okay. So we're not going to support you, kind of thing. It was. I didn't sleep well that night either. But fortunately, I had good friends that were attorneys that said, "No, you did the right thing. There's no problem here."
Yeah.
But you need a council that's strong enough that will listen to the community. Not just, I'm not saying, there's a few people that are just always going to be, I always say, I try to represent the 60% in the middle. There's always going to be 20 that no matter what I do, it's wrong. Then the other 20, the top end, no matter what I do, it doesn't matter, we still support you. So I always say, the hardest group to support is the 60 in the middle. And that, if you hit that, you're doing okay. So,
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, very good. Well, Brad, thanks for sharing some of these reminiscences. I think your memory was just fine.
Oh, yes. No, I don't know. What do they call it? Not plan check. Fact check kind of thing. It's close. I know some of it's spot on, but most of it's close. And I know Mike and Donna didn't want to do this, but I'm a firm believer that any kind of history you can share down the road, even if you get 2% of what I've said today, at least it's 2% versus there are regrets. I wish I'd interviewed my dad more or my mom or my grandparents more, but age is what it is,
And we've got so much to learn. And again, those who don't learn from history,
repeat.
doomed to repeat it.
You know what?
So
That's exactly right. We're doing it now.
yeah.
We're on the precipice, so in a big way. But Carpinteria, I think it'll survive. We may have bought it another 30 years, but see how it turns.
One step at a time.
One step at a time.
One 30-year step at a time.
Yep. Otherwise, you give up, and that what good is that?
Exactly.
So
Very good.
well, I hope I hope I didn't ramble too much, but
You rambled just the right amount.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.